They said it could not be done, but there's a group of women during World War II who connected soldiers with their loved ones and connected the loved ones with their soldiers. That group was called the 6888, the only group of women to have received the Congressional Medal of Honor. And I am so pleased to have as my guests the majority of those women, more than 800 who were a part of that battalion. Most of those women have gone on, and their story is now being told through documentaries, through a movie that's coming up, and their children. And I'm so pleased to have as my guest tonight Denise McBride in Nashville, Tennessee. Her mother was among that group of women who helped to save the day for the United States Army. Denise, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Denise, your mother, as I said, was a part of this group of women, the U.S. Army's 688, better known as the 6888
Right.
Central Postal Directory Battalion, and was the only all Black women's Army Corps unit to serve overseas in England and in France during World War II. Tell me,
Correct.
Denise, you did you know about your mother serving with this battalion?
Yes and no. I knew she was in the service, of course, and we talked a little bit about it. But what I have learned since then was a surprise to me as well. And let me go back a little ways. It was in 2021, a friend of the family, her name is Betty Harwell, she sent me an article, and the article was titled How an All Black Female Battalion Helped Save the Morale of Troops in Europe in World War II. She said, I want you to read that article because I think they're talking about your mother. Of course, I was surprised and I hurriedly read the article. My father was living at the time, so I called him and I said, Daddy, I'm reading an article and it could be the battalion that I still called my mother mommy was in. And he said, well, if it's 6888, it is. What? He said, yes. So I was surprised, enthused, didn't really know what to do at that time. However, I did look and I saw who wrote the article. And I also saw a colonel's name who was involved in the whole uh, situation. I sent letters to both or emails to both. The colonel answered me and I told her, I gave her my mother's name, her maiden name, which was Galloway. And she said, I'll take a look. And she sent me back a um, a photocopy of my mother's name, which is on the monument in Leavenworth, Kansas. At the time, I still didn't know much about it. So, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So from there, I began to be more than inquisitive. This is before any awards. It's like, who are these women?
So how long
And
ago? How long ago was that, Denise?
this started in 2021, so not that long ago.
Well, let's back
And
up. Let's back up.
okay,
What did you know about your mother's service in the United States Army prior to that?
I knew that she had enlisted in the army and she didn't talk a lot about it. I mean, I knew what they did, but not to the extent. She said, I worked in the postal division. Well, I'm thinking like most people at the post office, except for on an army base. So, in terms of how difficult the work was, no, that really never came out. But what did come out were the friendships. she maintained quite a few friendships with the women. And I met them, but when you're young, you don't sit in their conversations.
No, not during our era.
No, no, you don't.
You, as my mother
And
would say, you don't sit in here and look in my mouth. Stop looking in my.
I never heard any disgruntlement. But it wasn't until my father passed last year in February. And as I was going through his things, her things were also there, particularly military records. And I started pulling them out and reading them. And I guess I could have asked him about those before, but those were in his personal belongings. And so you don't go through those things. And I started seeing the enlistment, the discharge. I saw where she was sending money home. I saw the insurance cards in case something happened to her, that it would go to her mother. Then I started pulling out letters that she had written to her mother, talking about the stay, where she was. None of it was disgruntlement. None of it really talked about the hardships. And I thought about it. Why would you? Why would you upset your parents? Because I'm still baffled by this. Here are women between the ages of 18 and 40. They're leaving the safety of their homes, their family, their friends. Most of them are employed. 85% of them have already gone to college. So they don't need to be in the service. So what would make them or have that desire to go? Well, what I learned was, first of all, you can always depend on tribunes, African American papers,
Mhm.
because I think I sent you a picture, and that's from one of the black papers. They're the only ones who really showcased these women. But in reality, these women were going to face segregation, which they already were facing,
Mhm.
racism, sexism, and possibly death. I mean, it's it's hard to believe that someone would venture into that. But what they had on their side, Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary Bethune, they were going around the states and really trying to recruit, as they called them then, Negro women to enlist, to not only serve their country, but an opportunity for them. Many of the women decided to do so.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that easy. I mean, they had to go through the physical, the mental health, all of those tests that you have to take. So initially in 1942, they had the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. And that's what they were advocating for. But the War Department said, no, no, not so fast. That's not going to happen. So Congress said, okay, we're going to do something, but you're going to be separate. We're not going to have a joint WAAC. So that formed in 1943 the Women's Army Corps. And that's where these Black women came into play. Now, I need to be honest about something. I understand that there were two Puerto Rican women. At the time, I believe when you checked the box, you either checked Negro or white, and they
Mm.
checked Negro. And so, in all fairness, yes, 99.5% were Black women, but I don't want to slight the other two women that were a part of it. So,
My guest is Denise McBride. Denise's mother was a part of the 6th AAA Central Postal Directory Battalion. they were charged with moving a staggering 17 million pieces of mail. And it was expected that it would take them 6+ months to sort through all of this mail in deplorable conditions. The rats started eating through any packages that had been sitting in this facility. And so they had to, and it was cold, there were no windows for security reasons, and they had to sort through all of that mail. And it was a 26-year-old woman that led this group. So when we talk
Yes.
about these young women, but the head of this group was a
Charity Adams. Charity Adams.
she was
Yes,
only
indeed.
26 years old.
Yes, she was a Wilberforce graduate, mathematics major,
Uh-huh.
and I believe she got her master's in psychology. And to me, she was the perfect one. Obviously, I've never met her, but her stature, her intellect, her charm, her leadership, all the skills you need to lead 855 women. Now, she didn't do it by herself. There were 4 other captains. And one of the captains, ironically, her name was Kearney, and she was my mother's captain. How do I
Mm.
know that? Because on the letter, it has your company. My mother was Company A. And when I was reading, Captain Kearney was the captain for Company A. Since then, I have met her niece, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
So we
So
have, to revert a little bit, there are about 50 or 60 of us, and we're still trying to add to it.
when you say 50 or 60 of us
50 descendants.
descendants,
Right.
because there's a let me I want to play a little of an interview from one of the women. She was 94 at the time of this interview. This was the first time that we started to hear anything about the 6888 All Black Women's Army Corps. Let's
Okay.
just listen to a little of that.
Mhm.
And I want you to think about what your mother would have been thinking about.
Okay.
He is from Kansas, and they had a uh, he had a memorial set up in granite with all of our names on it, and he gave us a parade with but it's where the Buffalo Soldiers have a monument there at this in Leavenworth, Kansas. And the schools were closed for the parade, everything. It was just wonderful. They have a fort there. They have a lot of trainees. We were met at the airport by reporters. It was just it was it was it was unbelievable because after all those years, 75 years here, it was about 6 or 7 of us that he could find. And we were greeted and we were honored and we were given that parade. It was mind boggling because, you know, we had just come home and went back onto our lives. And I had married a soldier. We got back together and we started, and he lived in California. I lived in Philadelphia. I met him in California. We started our life there. And here, after my kids, everything has changed. And 75 years later, this Mr. Philbot calls us and wants to honor us. It was just, I couldn't believe it. And we went there and it was celebrated. And we were made to feel like we had done something worthwhile, you know.
And they had done something worthwhile.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they had not been honored. Denise, when you hear her, how do you think your mother would have responded?
Well, first of all, I hear her joy and sadness in her voice
Yeah.
because she mentioned at least twice it's been over 75 years. And it has. But what I enjoy about uh, this woman, as well as all the others prior, is that they didn't do it for fame. They did it because they understood how serious and how important it was for soldiers to receive mail. I mean, whether or not it's from your mom or dad or your girlfriend or wife, that isolation, and you're relatively young and you're not having any correspondence for 2 to 3 years, they felt it too. And that made them even more determined to get that mail out. And when we talk about the mail, I wish you could have seen those bags. They are heavy. They were six airplane hangars full from floor to ceiling, which is an incredible amount of mail. And to make matters worse, they had 7,500 Robert Smiths. Now, how do you find Robert Smith? And it could have been Bobby or Rob, all the other nicknames that you call people. And yes, they used some serial numbers, and that helped. But remember, soldiers are moving constantly. You know, you're in one spot, but it's a war. So you're going further and further. And so I admire these women for not only having the pride in what they did, but also not expecting anything. They didn't expect anything. They wanted the soldiers, Americans, to come home too.
And
They were, I
and
couldn't
then
hear you.
having to deliver some news too that your loved one got killed. They had to deliver that information as well when they couldn't find the soldier. But these women were tasked with putting in place a system that would help them
Yes,
identify all of these common names, and they
yes.
came up with it.
Now, I wish I could tell you what that system is because I'd give it to the post office here. But,
Right. I'm
but
waiting on the
no,
package now.
that's right. But yes, they did an incredible job with that. And I don't know if you know or not that they suffered three losses, three of their soldiers.
No, I didn't.
Yes, it was an authorized trip and it was a Jeep accident. And even though things had calmed down, you still had landmines.
Mm.
And so three of them were killed. And Charity Adams had to arrange for their funerals there, which I'm sure was very painful. But what I did not know until recently, she had to also ask three women that were the height and size of those that had died if they would sit for the measurements for the caskets. That's how they did it then. And I thought about, gosh, would I want to do that? But the truth is, when you're together as a family, if that's one small way I can help, I'm glad to do so. So those three women are buried in Normandy. There are four women in that particular cemetery out of 9,400, and three are from the 688, and the other one is from the Red Cross. So that was a sad moment
Yeah.
there.
Denise,
But
as we mentioned at the top of the show, Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry are working on a movie to honor these women or to bring the work that they've done to the attention of the masses. When you
Yes.
think about your mother and the work that she did, and this quiet hero that that's your mommy, as you said, you still call her.
Right,
What,
right.
what is it that you would like to have been able to talk to her about if you had known this when she was alive?
Well, her real reason or her reasons for going. And I think I actually know them. I think part of it was patriotism. I think another part was adventure and travel. My mother was very gutsy. She wasn't afraid of anything. And I look at where she was born and raised, which is Orange, Virginia. It's a small town that's 88 miles from Washington, D.C. And they did not have television or radio. They didn't go to the theater because of the segregation. If my grandmother would not have allowed that, nor would they have wanted to. So my mother's entertainment, believe it or not, was National Geographic. She loved it. But when I think about National Geographic, I also think about travel, learning about different countries. So I am sure that is something else that gravitated for her to travel and to be a part of it. Now, I do know that her love of perfume she got from France. I know that for sure because she would say, "Oh, I just love Black Narcissus and I got it in Paris." And she didn't exactly speak like that, but that was the aura. And I think I picked up that quality about perfume because that's one of the things that I enjoy. And then looking back, I remember in college, I would make up my bed and it was always very neat. And it's, oh my gosh, how do you do a bed like this? Well, in retrospect, I learned military bed making. I didn't really realize it. I just thought it was the way you make a bed well. But see, all of this is just coming back now. Um, her attitude about you can do anything you want to do, which is most of our parents say that. But she meant it. Yes, you can. Nothing can hold you back. You hold yourself back. And I'm seeing that. I'm sure it resonated early from the military and just continued.
So, what did Miss Inez say about what she did? What do you remember? You remember the perfume stories, but you said you saw her letters, you didn't see any complaining in the letters that she
No.
wrote to her mom about the
Mhm.
racism that they faced, about the work conditions that they were in, the segregation that they had to deal with.
No, she
What,
didn't write that. She didn't write that in the letters.
right.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
There was no complaining.
No, no.
And
Oh, I mean, there was the normal complaining of, boy, it's been a long day. The shifts are long, but it still wasn't the kind of thing that my grandmother would have been upset to say, oh my gosh, I got to get her out of there. It wasn't that. It was the normal thing that you and I would do if we're writing our mothers and saying, oh my God, I've been working all day. I'm so tired. But I don't think that she really knew how tired
yeah. So what do
because there were
you
three
remember?
shifts. There were three shifts that they
Right.
worked.
They work
Mhm.
24 hours a day, three different
Yes,
shifts. Yeah. So
yes.
Denise, what do you remember her talking about? You know,
I remember her talking about her friendships.
okay.
And yes, she talked a little bit about the work, but not in a gruesome, arduous way. It was this this is what we were assigned to do, and we did it. But more than anything, it was the friendships that she made. I think the leadership skills that she learned. um, I see more skill building than anything else in retrospect now.
Well,
I think,
also,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
we're talking about a group of women who are walking into the military, and the racism that they were facing was not any different than the racism that they left at home. So they were somewhat accustomed to that already, right?
Well, except for there wasn't racism in England and in France. It
No,
was
I'm talking about
from
the way their fellow white
military.
military people treated them.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
right, right.
yes, yes. But I think the difference was they had each other.
Hmm.
They relied on each other. And they proved the military in the United States that, hey, given an opportunity, look, look what these women can do. Not just these women, the Black men too. Look what they can do given the opportunity to do so. So I
And
think,
one of the interviews that I heard from one of the women, that she said what we did was exemplary, but we didn't get any recognition for it because it wasn't expected that we could do anything like we did. And if we did, if they were going to recognize us, they would have said that somebody helped us. And so they knew that they couldn't say that. And so there was just no recognition
no,
until,
no recognition, no parade, no fanfare, no nothing. No. And that is why I'm so happy to talk to you today, because I'm trying to speak for the 800 or so women that are gone.
yeah.
My mother is one of those 800. But unless we tell the story, it will be lost. And yes, it's helping to have Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey doing something. It's also helping that Blair Underwood is doing a Broadway play.
Oh, is he?
Yes. He attended the Congressional Gold Medal ceremony in Arlington, which is what I went to last June of
Oh,
2022.
nice.
And there were many highlights, but one of the first highlights I had was to meet Stanley Early, which is Charity's Adam's son.
Oh,
And it was just a pleasure to meet someone, a descendant of hers, since she had mastered so much. So that was a big pleasure. And then meeting Blair Underwood was the second pleasure because he's from a military background and he played two of the songs that will be part of the play. They were fabulous. I just can't wait for that to come out. So, Broadway, Netflix, it keeps the story alive. And these women do deserve it because really, not only were they trailblazers, whatever the definition is of pioneers, that's them. That's them.
yeah.
First of their
The
kind.
6888, the only women's military unit to receive the nation's highest civilian honor, Congressional Gold Medal. 850 African American women who were tasked with sorting through a backlog of 2+ years of mail, 17 pieces of mail, and they got it done.
17 million.
What did I say?
17.
17 million. 17 million, thank you. 17 million pieces.
Well, I
It's a,
think the other thing,
I can only imagine walking into that going, can we go back home?
right. Well, me too. Just just to look. First of all, it's February. It's cold.
Yeah.
And as you said, damp conditions. They had windows, but to shield away from the enemy seeing them is the reason why they were shaded. So they also had lots of what I call goodies. People have been sending food to their loved ones. So
Mhm.
now you know that food is gone, and what's left are the remnants from rodents.
Right. And just think about the families who are sending letters, they're sending food, and they're not hearing back. Can
Right.
you imagine the agony that families were going through thinking that their loved ones were dead because this
Right.
this mail is being piled up and it's not going in any direction?
That's right. And also, when I think about the mail, you're saying, well, who's who's the mail going to? Well, during this wartime, there were 7 million, not thousands, 7 million people participating in the war. So when I say that, I'm talking about all the armed services, of course, the Army, the Navy, the Seabees, Marines, but you had technicians, you had a lot of other disciplines that you have in a war. 7 million people.
Wow.
So that alone, I might have said, oh no. Now, I do remember that this is funny to me. I do remember asking my mother or saying to her, I guess I was in 10th grade, and I said, what's the age limit on going to the service? I don't remember what she said, but obviously wasn't old enough. And I said, but what I want to know is if I get in and it's just not for me, can I leave? And she said, I said, no, really, I want to leave. And she says, no, when you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
Now, that should have been a good time to ask her, well, did you ever think about leaving? But I know that she didn't, because whatever she did it wholeheartedly. Now, the second thing that I want to tell you that I think is funny now, when I heard that Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey were doing this Netflix, they had an announcement, a casting call in
Mm.
Atlanta. I said, oh, I can get to Atlanta. And I remember telling a girlfriend, I said, oh, this would be great to be in this. And my friend, not thinking either, said, yeah. Well, I went to bed that night and I woke up a little saner. And I said, there's no way I can play 19 years old. What am I thinking? But for a split second, I said, oh, this would be fun to do. Then I read what he was looking for, the size, whether or not you could march for long distances. No, can't do that anymore. Um, what you could pick up in terms of weights. Oh, no, none of this is for me. So I can't wait to see the younger people doing those kinds of things. But as I said, that made me chuckle at myself.
Thinking that you could.
Right.
Denise,
Well, yeah.
yeah, I really do thank you. And I know that our audience thanks you, and every audience that you have an opportunity to stand before to help tell the story of your mother and her journey with the 688, the all Black battalion that served in the U.S. Army during World War II.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to share their story.
Yeah, it would be great if you all could connect the descendants and be able to have
Well,
a
we
story.
have.
Yeah.
We have, as I
Well,
said, there are about 60 of us now, 50
okay.
to 60 of
Are
us.
you going to have a viewing? You know, y'all could do it on Zoom these days, watching and then
Well,
have a discussion afterwards. That would be interesting.
well, I can look into that.
I think that would be cool.
One last thing I wanted to tell you is that I mentioned to you earlier off camera that I was going to Europe initially, and something has come up. But that trip wasn't a trip in vain. We were going to retrace their steps.
Ah,
So we were starting in Scotland, and then going to England, and then going to France. Now, the trip is still going on, and it will start the 16th of June through the 30th. So hopefully next time I'll be able to be a part of the group. But I'm looking forward to hearing about their trip.
I know
Going
that's
right
going to be.
on the same footsteps of our mothers or grandmothers or aunts or whomever they are to so many people.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Denise, again, thank you so much. President Joe Biden honored these women in March of 2022, signing the bill for them to receive the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. The
It's still,
only,
we're still waiting. We're still waiting for the actual medal. It's in process of being minted. That is a whole process that I don't quite know that much about.
and then you'll get it. It'll come to you.
As I understand it, what I'm looking for more than for me, there are 6 women left. It's not a lot. The oldest one is 103, and her
Wow.
birthday is in October. And so some of us are planning to go and greet her for her birthday. She lives in Montgomery, Alabama. I want more than anything, not just for me, I want those 6 women to have it in their hand, to hold it, and then to be able to share it with their immediate family. Um, that would bring me greater joy than it coming to me. I can be secondary. I just want to see their faces after, as the clip says, 75, well, it's really 80 years.
Now,
80
yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah.
So some could say, better late than never. I will simply say I'm glad they're being recognized, and I hope they won't ever be forgotten.
Well, thank you for continuing to spread the message of your mom and the other 849 women who were a part of the 6888, and keeping their story alive, and the incredible work ethic, their stick-to-itiveness, and their patriotism to their country. Denise, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all so much for joining us for this edition of Sisters of Wellness. We will see you again next time. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment, and we will see you next time. Denise.